All right, that's probably good. Yeah, so the format of this meeting, the idea was to talk about just the whole project manager system, the bounties, the build and stake, also to be a piece of it. But wanted to have it in a public setting so that it's more transparent. So I didn't want to have just behind closed doors what's going on, but I wanted the community to understand, because there's a lot of people who are confused about where we're going. And so I'm going to present an idea that I think we should do, and then as a group we'll discuss it and we can go from there. Anchor, you got like a really hot mic. If we can get you to mute, that would be really helpful, or we need to mute this guy. All right, I'm going to server mute him because that's too loud. Let me put that in chat. Muted you. Anchor. Hot mic. All right. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to have a discussion here. I have a couple ideas and wanted to get your take on it. I did a Figma diagram, very loosely drawn, poorly drawn, of what I'm thinking is a good way to go. But this is, like I said, a public conversation. So I think that's a good way to go. And then we'll kind of go from there. So there's been a couple of pain points in the project management like space. And what that has been is there's been lots of communication that's been disparate, like between Discord DMs, Discord groups, different channels on Discord, and like phone calls and all kinds of things, and even Asana groups and teams. And so it's been all over the place. So what I'm hoping to do is make it unified. It's not that any one idea was bad or necessarily. It's more that we had too many ideas being implemented independently. So my hope is to kind of focus this a little bit so that the community has a clear goal, a clear direction on how to do projects. Because heretofore it's been kind of, we tried this, we tried that, and then there's been some abuse of the system. And so we're hoping to alleviate that. So that is actually a lot of the work that's been done on the dev Discord has been for that purpose. So what I wanted to do was have this conversation out in the open with some of the key stakeholders. If anyone in this group sees somebody in the audience who's one of those mods that we want to bring up, let's go ahead and bring them up. But for now, I think this is, at least we got somewhat of a quorum. And that was kind of the intention behind this. So what I'm going to do is I'll present kind of my idea, and then we'll kind of go from there. And then I have a couple questions that I still haven't quite figured out and thought maybe we could talk it out together. But what I want, the goal of this meeting, the outcome that I'm hoping for, is to have this is how we do things as commune for projects. That's the goal that I'm looking for, so that we can communicate it out to the community at large, document it so that it's very clear. If you want to do a project, if you want to do a bounty, this is how you do it. And that's what I'm looking for. Any questions from the group on the stage so far? Oh, did we lose Fam? Hold on, let me invite him back up here. But anyway, yeah, so that's kind of the gist of the idea. But yeah, if anyone has any thoughts, please jump in. This is a conversation. Like, this is just an open public conversation. And then what I'll do is I'll start presenting if no one has anything that they wanted to start off with in the beginning.
I can sort of like go over like what some of the issues were, because basically the primary thing that I found when doing an audit of all the projects that were being worked on in the development server was that almost every one of them, except for 2 out of like 20 or something like that, were all basically like fraudulent. Who are taking open source repos and then pulling all the readmes and the licenses out of it and removing any reference to them, and then we're claiming them as their hours and then trying to get like 40 to 80 hours worth of work for that. So it's not fair to the people who are in the open source community that we're supposed to be supporting, and also it's not fair to us when we're like handing out money for basically no work. So I wanted to put in more stringent controls. We did lock down the dev server. It sounds like that is going to wind up opening up again. But again, these are all open for discussion. So.
And that's a great point. That's actually something I wanted to discuss in this meeting. I have the workflow of how I'm thinking this would go, and a part of that is the dev Discord. So that's why that's a really good point about how much are we going to open up that dev Discord, because Like I'm a big freedom guy. I think freedom's awesome. Decentralization is awesome. But the problem is if you do that infinitely, then you get anarchy, and then you also get scammers coming in doing extremely nefarious things, more than just scamming, and that's not okay. And I don't want to be a part of that. And I don't think any of us here would want to be a part of that. So because of that, out of necessity, we had to move a little bit away from 100% freedom and move towards locking down. I think there's a happy medium that we can find, and so that's what we're here to discuss and find. I have something that I think is a good happy middle ground, and we can talk about it, and that's the whole point of this. So I'm glad that you brought up those issues, because yeah, that's the other thing. There's just been a lot of submissions that just weren't worth our time, and it's not worth it for the community, because then that's reflective of the community if we give space to submissions that are just have no value. There are some that do, but then they get kind of drowned out by the other submissions. So that's another piece of that. That's an unfortunate part that we're trying to solve here. But I think we have a good space here that can help eliminate some of that noise. So was there anything else from anyone else? Otherwise, I'll jump into the workflow that I was kind of thinking of doing, and then we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, like I said, thank you very much for jumping in there, Baco. I want to have a discussion here. It's not just all of us are smarter than one of us. So that's kind of the goal in my mind. I didn't know if you had anything to open up there with FAM, and if not, that's okay. All right, not hearing anything. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show the Figma that I'm talking about, and then we'll go from there. So let me know if you can see the diagram I got going there.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So here's my just my knee-jerk reaction to what I think would make a lot of sense. We have devs come in, and the first interaction we have, and these can be devs that say, hey, I have a project or that I want to start doing. The first thing they need to do is fill out the Google form to get into the waiting room, to get into the dev Discord. Or it's a dev that says, I have no project, I just want to work on Commune. Same exact process. Fill out the form, get in the waiting room. Or maybe you're a dev that already worked on a project and it's in flux and we're still ironing that out. Same thing. Fill out the form, get in the waiting room, because I want to centralize everything around this dev Discord instead of having multiple things all over the place. This way, it's also more transparent. So they end up in the waiting room. Now, once they get vetted, and that process, yes, has been slow, but we have 2 individuals now that are being tasked with going through them rapidly to figure out what's going on there. And so they're helping to vet those a lot faster. And so we should get people who are legitimately working on things through that process and into the rest of the dev Discord server a lot faster now. And we also have some automated checks as well that should also expedite that. So that is, we hear you on the slow part, but we're trying to do that. The one question we have is, should we make the preliminary entry into the dev Discord before being manually approved? Should we have like a place where people can petition their case? Like maybe they have a really young GitHub repo, in the sense that their GitHub account is only like a month old or something for some reason, like their previous GitHub account got hacked and so they had to make a new one, and then that looks suspicious, right? Why do you have a brand new GitHub account? And they can explain and petition there, and then we can kind of vet through that before letting them in if we can find some validity behind that. So that's the idea that I have in my mind. After they get approved, now they're like an approved dev, for lack of a better term, and they can access the rest of the dev Discord channel, which is where the main development would end up happening. Yeah, I like the waiting room idea. I think it's a good idea, because then they're there, they can see some things like maybe announcements, etc. But then what the problem is if 90% of the people end up being scammers, there's just so much noise that ends up in the main Discord and has been really painful. So after that, this is kind of the meat and potatoes. First of all, any questions on this process? Does this process make sense to everybody? Does everyone kind of agree with it? Any pros, cons? What do you guys think? This is just the first thing. We already have this in place, but wanted to open it up to the floor on the stage. Some people typing. Let's see. Big thumbs up from Bowser, so that's cool. And thank you so much for you and your team just crushing it with working on the Discord server. So we got this in process in place. Interrupt me if anyone wants to go back on anything. I don't want to be prescriptive here. I want to have a conversation. So maybe we can limit to, yeah, that's not a bad idea. I think that's the limiting the messages to 1 to 2 messages a day per user is probably a good idea if it needs to happen. But that's a good idea. Like we could make it. I've seen that where if you're messaging too much and then you have a timeout, it can be really frustrating when you're having an argument with somebody on Discord. But in this case, that kind of makes sense in the waiting room. That I totally forgot about that feature. That's a really good idea. I'm gonna write that down in my notes. Waiting room. I think it's something like per minute maximum messages or something.
It's a slow mode.
Yeah, slow mode. There you go. Max messages per minute, aka slow mode. Love that. That's a great idea. See, this is why we're doing that. I totally forgot about that. Love it. That's like fantastic. It may need to be harsher than slow mode. Yeah, that's a good point, and we'll take a look and we'll figure it out. But that's a great idea. All right. So we could do something like that. That makes the waiting room make a lot more sense, where people can talk in there. But then if somebody goes in there and they're just spamming when bounty, when bounty, when bounty over and over, they'll get into slow mode or get stopped. So that it disincentivizes that kind of behavior. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Once they're in, they have access to general, off-topic, logs, and they can just access them because they're vetted. We know that they're going to do actual work and contribute to the community. Have at it, go for it. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So after that, then now the meat and potatoes is the workflow for commune-ai module projects. So this is where it gets a little more interesting. So once you're in, you have access to all the different channels, but then there's a subsection called the modules section. It doesn't have a section, but it's called modules. In here, there will be a legend that explains basically this, but explains what these different channels are. So each one is like a module project concept. If it's green, what that means, and we're still ironing this out. This is a concept that I'm putting forth, and actually I stole it from Baco here. It was actually his idea. But what I want to do is massage it a little bit. A green dot means it's an idea that's been approved to work on, and it has a bounty tied to it. That part we're still figuring out a little bit, but that's the concept that I'm putting forth today. And then if we happen to know somebody working on it, then they would get like a unique icon. Like in the case of Music Mixer, we just put a little 2/8 notes on there.
Can I?
Go for it. Do you have something to interject?
So it's actually the green means that it's open for developers to join on it. Then yellow means that the team is full. Red means there's an issue on it, and then the emojis are that they're working on it and actively have a bounty open on it.
So yellow I thought was their, oh, yellow is their full? Like the team is full?
Yeah, so like sometimes there's people who apply or they all want to work on the same project, and then the team like can't have like 20 devs working on the same thing. So
makes sense. Project team is full. Okay. And then red means what? It's been abandoned?
Like there's some kind of issue that needs to be sorted out by the admin team.
Oh, like at the moderator level?
Yeah. So like people might be able to adjust that, but then like they may not be a mod to be able to fully address it. Or if it's like a funding issue or something, then FAM would want to look at the red dots.
Oh, okay. And then when it's a unique icon, I didn't understand that.
That means that it's just the project is in motion, has a team on it, and has a bounty. So it's basically full go.
It's the same as yellow, except they can get more people.
Yeah. Well, it's just, yeah. No. It's the same as yellow. It's full and it goes. Wait. I don't know. No. It's the bounty. It's the difference is the bounty.
So yellow, there's no bounty.
Yeah.
And there's a bounty. Okay. So that's something I want to talk about and figure. And then if there's no icon, nothing has been approved. It's just an idea that somebody threw down there, which is fine. So I think the idea here is we need to vet this part a little bit, but let's talk about the second part, the rules of engagement, and then we'll come back to this and see if this part would change any of this or vice versa. And what does the group think? So projects, I think, can be worked on at any point, but the bounties need to be assigned via like evaluated, like not evaluated, but evaluated. Like, and the way that I'm thinking about doing this is that at the build and stake meeting, in the very beginning, we take all the submissions for projects that happen during the week and we say, hey, fam, here's a list of like 3 or 5 or whatever there is of projects that have been like suggested to do, not done, but suggested to do. And then you come up with, this is what I think the bounty should be for that thing, with almost zero context, right? And then what we would do is we'd go in here, and at the very top of one of those channels for that project, we would list what the bounty is. That way, hey, I want to know how much a bounty is for Hugging Face, whatever that means. You go in there and then you'd see it. And then also we would add like a project description. But the whole thing is it should be very transparent and very fast, so that we throw it in there. If anyone ever has a question, well, because some of these will be worth different bounties, I'd imagine, due to the valuation given by FAM. But you know where to go. You just go to that channel and you'll see it. But when that happens is at the build and stake in the first like 5 minutes or so. Should be very just rapid fire. And then if somebody wants to talk about it like later, they can talk about it. Like let's say you're working on the Hugging Face one and the valuation was like 1,000 com or something for a bounty. And then you're like, that doesn't sound right. You can talk about it in that channel, and then we can kind of talk about it async and kind of go from there. But that way, the point is, I don't want DMs with FAM or myself or anyone else going, just otherwise it just becomes this huge churn and noise, and it just gets really confusing. And it's not transparent, because we have seen cases where 2 groups of people were working on the same project. But if we funnel it through the module section, it's 1, transparent, 2, everyone else will, and with that, everyone will know what is being worked on and not being worked on, because all the discourse is there. So if like 2 people had different ideas on how the Hugging Face would go, they could talk in the Hugging Face channel, and then they can see maybe they need to form a team, or maybe they need to work separately, but at least they know that that's happening and the other conversations are also happening. And that gets rid of like the Asana and group messages and the DMs. And and the idea is, if you circumvent that process, like, then we're not going to approve it, because like we need to make this in a sustainable way that's not just inundating our inbox, if you will. So that was the idea there. So the question then is, I think personally there should be an icon associated with that. One of these should have it has been evaluated by FAM, and this is what the bounty associated with that project will be. And then it's not awarded until completion and presentation at build and stake. That was the idea I have. Does anyone have any input on this? Particularly FAM, if you have any thoughts on that, I'd definitely like to hear your opinion as well.
Yeah, I do think that like making sure that bounties, like I guess thinking of what types of bounties there are. Like there are bounties that we propose, and we can negotiate a value beforehand. There's bounties people can like come to us and say, "Hey, I built this," and then we can judge like how valuable it is, or like whether we think it's valuable. And then I guess like we can also decide, yeah, like bounties based on like weekly build and stake, where like perhaps we can have a portion of our budget, like kind of allocated to like every week, like we give out like the top 3 modules that the community supports gets like this much of like this much tokens or something like that, where it creates an incentive of like creating quality. And it does add a little competition, but I think it's a healthy form of competition, because it's like, oh, like everyone's trying to make something cool, and it also brings in the community as well. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Like I think it's a good idea to have like those approaches and iterate from there.
So I think that totally works with this system, because one of the things I'm going to do, I actually I can just add it here. So in here, I think we should have something like this, where it's a project submission, and in here, oops, submission, if I could spell today, or whatever. So if somebody has an idea, they can actually put it in here, and then, because what I want to do is, instead of us getting hit throughout the whole week and then it just becomes this context switching nightmare, what I'd like to do is have people, if they have an idea, put it in project submissions. Then we come, and that's that one case that you were talking about, right? People have an idea, then we can talk about it in here a little bit, but the real point is, at the build and stake, then we say, hey, these 3 people wrote in project submissions for 3 different projects. What do you think, fam? You do the valuation. If you want to do a group valuation, we could do that, but that's going to make it a lot more complex who's going to facilitate that and how. And if you want to talk about that, we totally can.
Yeah.
My idea was just to have you shoot from the hip and say, oh, that looks like
Yeah.
1,000 com project. That looks like a
Yeah,
2,000 project.
we should have at least 2 people, 2 project managers, agree on a price.
What's a project manager? That's another thing
like-
we need to get terms. I
Yeah,
thought project
so-
manager were people who are doing these things, but it sounds like you mean mods. Like, what do you mean by project manager?
No, so essentially project managers are essentially people that are evaluating the projects. And so in order for this to happen, the project manager has to know the status and what needs to be done by the end of the week. We should operate on a weekly basis where
Mhm.
at the start of the week, it should be not the project manager's job, but it should be the person completing the module. If they're doing a bounty for that week, they have to say, this is what I plan to do, or this is what I'm confused about. So that like the project, essentially like the beginning of the week, we set out the goals for the week, so that at the end of the week, if those goals are met, then the bounty is paid out.
So wait, my understanding is we are moving towards bounties paid on completion. But what you're talking about sounds like more like a contract job, where if they do work and hit milestones, they get paid at milestones. Is that what you're saying?
Ideally, we want the bounties to be 1 week projects. I think most things don't have to be like multiple weeks, especially with all the open source stuff that's out there. It's just sitting there. I think what we should try to do is just get open source projects like onto Commune, make them run on like some Linux machine. Document them, see accredit their where they're from, and then hopefully we can all basically we want to do that. That's not that much work. Now some projects are a bit more complicated. For instance, this WASM or fine tuning project is a complicated one, so I can see how that can take a few weeks. But I don't think it should take longer. I don't think these modules should take 1 or 2 months.
So I personally don't like paying out in without the project being complete, because it kind of makes a weird loophole where they can half finish a bunch of projects forever and then it just
this is true, but every time I complete, most times I complete. There's been very few times where I don't see the work. I try to look at what they commit to, but I do think I do to an extent. I also agree with you, because people will always say, "Oh, I need this much more time. Can you pay me by the week?" And that definitely leaves a bad incentive. So I agree. I think we should, from now on, we should pay upon completion. They have to justify that they deserve payment by having something publicly exposed, or having you being able to run it on your computer, so that you can interact with it in some form.
It needs to be presented at the build and stake in a
it has to be presented. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be in a usable form. I think most things can be done in a week, especially with all the open source stuff. You're not building stuff from scratch.
But that doesn't matter.
Of these projects,
it doesn't matter if it's done in a week or not, because if it's done, it's just whenever they complete it. Because here's the thing: you coding something in a week is different than a high schooler or fresh out of college guy building the same thing. And if it takes them 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, because the end goal is presentation at build and stake. So and also, you tell me, if we're going to do payment on completion, then what is the necessity for having milestones? There isn't one. So why would we even bother with that? What does that gain you? You tell me. Maybe I'm missing something.
I agree. There shouldn't be milestones. We should define. Well, to me, a milestone is just something that you complete. But yes, for a project,
a milestone is complete, and then we can do requirements.
Yeah,
I like that.
That's what I mean by weekly requirements, or not even weekly. We should probably have just module-based requirements.
Exactly.
And so if the module needs to be improved, we then update the requirements for kind of like a Git commit or a branch. When you want to add to the branch, you you change the hash to you kind of reference the path one. So we need some form of versioning of this is the first bounty. Now, okay, you completed the first the first requirements. Then let's say we realize, oh, we want to add this. now, okay, like we add another bounty that's on that module that updates okay, now that updates the requirements to what we want it to be. So we're kind of like updating an existing module bounty. If it's not like that's the one thing about, yeah, I think doing it that way
You
it
know,
would be interesting.
I think that makes a lot of sense, but that's also solving problems we don't have yet. So I love that idea. So I want to kind of do minimum viable product, and then we can iterate on it and make it bigger
Yeah,
and
no,
bigger. But
yeah,
for now, heretofore, 90% more or more of the projects have been garbage. So just being honest with you.
I don't think
So
that's true entirely. I think a lot of the projects are just like not polished. I like because a lot of these projects are just my ideas that I want to do. They might
Yeah,
not be implemented very well,
well,
but
but that's
it's
what
just
I
it's
mean. It's
mostly
not
the
the
ones that are
idea.
like that are like not accrediting the open source stuff. Like that's the biggest problem, I think.
yeah, I think we should definitely see where, like, we should definitely find where these references are and accredit them as due.
So let's circle back here
Yeah.
because I don't want to get too much into weeds, and I want to make sure we have deliverables here. So we are in agreement. We're doing payment on completion, and we also agree that it makes sense that we do the valuations. Now, the thing about the valuation thing, I'm a little confused. You talked about project managers being someone other than mods, but I'm a little confused. So we need to have a good definition of terms here. So
You can
let's live an
you can have the
example of
product managers
text
be
to audio.
mods.
Okay, so
Yeah, you can have,
but are they in charge of like all of these?
yes.
So
Yes. So we have all the project managers will be mods because we will need them to be aware of the projects, and they'll also have to change the channels upon request from like new bounties and new devs. So some
okay,
devs don't have channels. So I think all
so
the
then they're
project managers
supposed to
should have.
shepherd those projects. I'm kind of okay with that. That kind of makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, no, that's
So
yeah,
the community
yeah. Like
can't do that. The mods have to, but people can apply to become mods to become the project managers.
the
Or I guess that
community
could be
can
yet another
definitely
role.
help. Yeah, anyone can apply to be a mod.
Okay.
And we could maybe even have a validator that votes for you if you are a mod on the server. Like you just like we like yeah, we can have an incentive program to basically kind of like how one of our validators already is like,
That makes sense.
representing project management.
We just need you to stake the full amount to it, but we can definitely do that. I think that's a good idea. So if we had like a separate one for this, would we make one and then all the project managers like divide from it, or would you do it like a validator for each and every single project manager?
Um, I would do a validator for no for all. Well, there might be different sets of project managers. I can do I think it's best to have a prime validator for all the project managers, and if you want to create your own and for another set of like you can, but I think it's just easier. Like I'm trying to actually cut back on my validators right now. I'm trying to cut. It's just hard to manage a lot of validators.
I have ones that I can customize the validation for, and then make it like secure so that like people can't access like fudge the information or whatever. I can implement that.
Yeah, like yeah, like essentially, yeah. So with this update today, hopefully, like
There's an update today.
essentially we want to make it really easy for like we have a template of just adding two numbers for a miner and then a validator that checks that. So like we also have a subnet function or a testnet where you just it deploys like two validators and two miners. And so just using that example will give you an understanding of, okay, well, the validators are just pinging the miners to check if they can add those two numbers. And there's a scoreboard, there's a leaderboard, like on the validator. It's actually a data frame, but when you call it, it serializes the data frame.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's convenient because then I wound up using pandas to get mine going, which was helpful.
yeah. Like I just but yeah, like this, it's gonna make it a lot easier, and this also doesn't require the blockchain to run this validator network, which makes it very very flexible for like any on-chain not Web3 Web2 application. But yeah, like I'm just finishing that up, but it's in the core branch. And hopefully we can merge that PR today tomorrow. But I will, yeah, like that's
There's another
That's
meeting
something that's
tomorrow with the core devs that I hope you can join, where we can talk
yeah.
about
No,
the PR,
I'll join that too.
process, because there's a lot of comments on that PR, and there's some other PRs that are open too that we need some feedback on. But that would be really great. I do want to be careful about solving everything with code. Like, obviously a fan of code for sure, but it would be, I think there's also like a human element to this, and so that's one of the reasons why I'm putting this together. And if we can come up with a validator that validates everything, that would be amazing. But in the short term, I think we need to have something else in place. But yeah, we can figure those parts out. So at a later date. But I think this project manager concept of having them own different channels and moderate them and kind of shepherd the process makes sense. But then so are you saying that these mods, or whoever they are, would own that project and then also be the developers for that project? Like, for instance, this text to audio, would we assign a mod to it, or somebody volunteer and then they get the bounty? Would that be the same person who does the dev work?
Text.
I think that's a conflict of
Like
interest.
we could let's say we can have maybe 10% of the bounty, or like a certain fraction of the bounty, be dedicated towards the project manager.
So is this
Like,
getting too complicated, do you think? Because, like, couldn't it just be self-organizing teams, and then like
Just
we
have
just evaluate the presentation and then send the money to where the team says to send to? Or do we
Yeah,
really need
no,
project
you can
managers?
have it like that too. No, yeah, like you can have it. So yeah, like the project managers are essentially, it's the front of people that are essentially managing projects with commune through the bounty system. Eventually, what's going to happen is you're going to have, because right now we're mainly just doing it in a somewhat decentralized way. But what would be ideal is if you have separate teams. Well, actually, you kind of do have that already, like separate teams that aren't just us doing their own things. And I guess
So
we do have that.
That's what
So
I'm saying.
I've worked on a number of like open source and like consensus based projects, and I find that it's a lot easier if you just sort of group people into small groups and let them form their own hierarchies, and then
Yeah.
just let that naturally happen. Because if you try to like force it, it's like herding cats. It's very difficult.
That's fine. That's
And I
crazy.
kind of, and as much as I like the idea of minimizing the overhead, right, administrative overhead, even though I'm proposing these ideas, like, I'd rather it be kind of simple and not, because like the more people you have involved, the more confusing it can get. I think that, but again, I think there's kind of like a happy medium there. So
Yep.
otherwise, now I'm managing a bunch of mods, managing a bunch of people, and now we have to figure out who gets what. And then also, you're saying you want teams to self-organize in addition to that. I think it would just be really clean to be like, submit a project, or you submit a project, fam, and then we make make these modules on there. People jump in there if they want to work on it or not. They figure out who's going to be like the person who's the figurehead, and
Yeah.
then they present. And if it's done, and then they figure out where we send the bounty to, and just keep it very clean like that.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do something else, we can do that.
We could yeah, like I do like self-organizing. I think self-organizing is something we need to really well, obviously, like creating incentivizing a self-organized system is ideal.
Well,
In this scenario, that's
this
what we
would
want.
totally do that, because otherwise, also the project managers are going to go for quantity instead of quality, right? Because they're like,
Yeah.
well, if I'm only getting 10%, let me grab as many of these projects as I can and just hope that the devs finish. So, and then they'll
That's
also
true.
be like shepherding them in terms of beating them with a
That's
stick.
true. Yeah.
Get it
Yeah.
done. I
And
want my 10%.
and I'd also be aware of certain project managers pretending to not be affiliated with the people they're evaluating, which is why we would need not just one but two people confirming. Okay, like the one project manager is probably going to do a lot of the work, but then you need a second project manager to be like, okay, yeah, like I think two signing off is, we don't have to do that initially, if we're spreading ourselves too thin.
Well,
But like,
I think two is fine, and I'm happy. Like, I mean, I think you also should have like maybe like a couple like 3 or 4 core devs that you like are like in the inner, like we've known them for a long time and know that they're good.
Higher
And then
trust.
and then they plus one other one can sign off on it or something.
But I think an even simpler interim. I mean, you guys tell me if I'm crazy. Please do so. But an even simpler interim would be at the build and stake. We look at it. And fam, you just give a thumbs up, thumbs down if they complete it or not. That's kind of what we've been doing so far, and I think it kind of works. But we can also do a deeper dive during the week when they submit the form on, I believe it's Tuesday night, Wednesday, to say, hey, I have a project I want to present at the build and stake. One of us could like do a quick screen of it, see if it's even worth presenting. And then that way you kind of get the two factor, if you will, and then fam gets the final say on at the actual presentation. I think that kind of solves everything that we're talking about. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that sounds good.
If I can just jump in quickly about that. So what I can do is I can amend the application form for taking part in the build and stake. Because right now it asks people to list whether or not what they're developing is a new project that sort of hasn't already been showcased or hasn't been known about, or if it's an existing project. So I can add an extra tab for a bounty application, and then I can set those aside, and I can sort of find a way to transfer the information somewhere, or we'll find a centralized place to put the information so that you guys can access specifically those bounty applications. So you guys won't have to sort of trawl through any of the other applications for the build and stake that we get, if that helps.
I think it does. That does bridge nicely into the other question I had. So fam, I want to focus like the community a little bit. It seems like we're kind of all over the place, but one of the focusing points that I have is, does it actually make sense to do build and stake and bounty system, or should we just do one of those? And the reason I'm asking is because heretofore, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't had a build and stake where somebody completed anything that was worth staking to. Correct me if I'm wrong. I definitely could be. Like, are we providing a mechanism for something?
Yeah, no,
and add
yeah,
it?
Like, step in and correct you there. There was a completed project from our boy Big Dookie. Thank you very much.
It wasn't a module, but I agree, except it wasn't a module. At the very end of that, he was
true,
he said, "This is great," and we all agree he crushed it. Like, I want to be very, very clear. He crushed it. That was cool. It was not a module.
Yeah. Good point.
But it was amazing. It was amazing. And the follow up to that was, he was like, "Please, somebody help me make a module with this." And I think that's fantastic and that's great. But I think the purpose of the build and stake is, here's something that's done, completed. You can use it now. And that has not happened in the build and stake fashion, but in the bounty fashion, I could see that actually happening soon. But fam, what are your thoughts there? And yeah, Kev, you crushed it by far. Like, you're amazing.
Yeah, like, I think that having, like, showing the build and stake actually like legit modules. Well, first our main problem is we need to incentivize people to stake on different things, and so I think there's a certain challenge here, and that has to do a bit with, if I'm being honest, a bit in the way CommSwap has structured their wallet, which they basically only allowed people to just stake on their wallet as they're bridging off of Ethereum, or like as they're bridging off, and so we want to encourage people to stake more. Like, we want to have more staking activity, and not just people just more decentralized staking, which is why I proposed the 3 the 3 million cap, because that will force people to stake on more projects, and so like, and also another one could be quadratic voting.
So that's, I think another thing. Yeah. Okay. So the quadratic voting, that's another thing. But I think these are other symptoms of other issues. But I think the main point you're trying to make is you want to have more people stake to new good projects, and that sense, I'd table the CommSwap thing, and I'd table some of those other the maximum amount of staking thing, because those are, I don't think actually
like, they're important, but
that's more of
a that's true. That's true. There's 80 million. Like, I don't control that much. Like, I can obviously control a decent amount, but I think over time I'm going to control less and less. And so I think the white paper I'm going to be releasing in the next few days is going to essentially incorporate the Uniswap protocol into basically like, well, you mint staking tokens, in addition to native tokens, and then those staking tokens are essentially particular to that, like they're basically emissions being put into a staking pool. So it's like you're basically like incentivizing people to stake on new things because maybe they think it's valuable, and maybe other people might think it's valuable in the future. And so I think creating that incentive structure makes things more interesting, but also more volatile.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think we should save that because that's a core
let's
mechanism. Let's save that for the dev meeting tomorrow.
Let's not talk about it now. Sorry.
Right, but for today, what I think makes a lot of sense, this is just an idea off the cuff, but if we have the bounty system, right, and because here's what I realized, people have to fill out a form to present on Fridays anyway, even if they want to do build and stake and have nothing to do with a bounty. Well, then you're halfway to doing a bounty anyway. So here's my proposition. Let's just use a bounty system. However, on the build and stake day, they do that, right? They do the presenting what they did for a bounty. And then in addition to that, they get an ephemeral short-term stake. And we ask the community at large, hey, if you saw anything that you thought was really awesome, vote with your wallet via staking. This is a really cool project. Do you want to see commune succeed? Put your money where your mouth is and stake to it. Obviously, there's incentive for you to stake anyway, like everybody, because it evaluates the whole thing, and you get the return anyway because of the the fee's not like 100% depending on what the case is, whatever it is. The point being is that it's good for the community. So I don't think it has to be one or the other. Why don't we combine these two? It could be build and stake because the idea is the community. We ask the community to rally behind these devs who did good work in addition to the bounty that they're getting. Does that kind of get our cake and eat it too? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's good. We can do both and try to combine them both. I think we should require every person that wants to claim a bounty needs to present on build and stake.
Oh, 100%. That is an action.
Yeah.
That needs to be a requirement.
Yeah, and we want to keep it short.
We can do the build and stake as like as a showcase more than of completed bounties.
Oh,
and ideally we want to engage the community. Like we want to essentially incentivize people to vote. And yeah, like I think right now people aren't really voting for crazy stuff.
I feel like I feel like
that's not true. That's not true. Sorry.
There's a little bit of voting, but I think it's probably worth considering that for some of these like behaviors that we're trying to incentivize, we may not need to incentivize them. We may just need to incentivize them by making them really, really, really easy to do. I imagine there are people that aren't participating because they don't know how. For instance, we have we have our example of like Kev building the thing, and he's like, oh, I really want to make this a module, but making a module is hard. Like it's not the onboarding process for actually interfacing with a lot of these mechanics that we would like to see people interfacing with is if we had more onboarding support for those kind of things, I think we would see more activity in those areas.
There's a lot of work on that, and you're absolutely right, but that is a separate issue, right? The build and stake is for when people have successfully done it. However they've successfully done it, that's what it's for. They've done it, they've completed it, cool. But you're absolutely right.
We need to discuss that tomorrow during the dev meeting for sure.
The good news is there's like at least three individuals making huge strides to that end. Fam and Baco and Comnex, like all like groups or whatever you want to call it, are doing incredible work there. So I'm very excited for the short term and the long term. That is going to change. It's just a matter of time. So I know Comnex has an announcement coming up that they've been teasing a little bit that I think is going to address a lot of that. I think, and then Fam is teasing in this meeting how he's going to merge his core branch really, really soon, which should also help with a lot of that. I'm also working with a guy on documentation. So that's another thing that I want to bring up tomorrow in the core dev meeting. But again, I think that is a separate topic, because you're absolutely right. It's completely valid. Like, it's like, how do I make this a module? Yes, that is a thing. But this meeting is about how do we do projects. So I just want to make sure we're on point, on mission with the intention of these meetings. Otherwise,
yeah. I
3-hour long meetings.
Yeah. I think the like the how do I make a module is one thing, but I imagine like that figuring out how to stake and vote to something is also a reasonably complex process as well. So it's worth thinking about, like, how can we make this easier for people rather than like
I totally agree. I think
well.
we should look at like minimum viable products, something really easy. And why did I say that? Because I think one of the projects we should make that are like a bounty for somebody to make is a easy stake button website, right? Somehow to make that process easier. That sounds like a bounty to me.
Or like build it into the hub where you can, because they have all those different projects on the hub. You can just like
great idea.
Stake directly there. That's great.
Yeah, that's
absolutely,
a great idea.
Stuff like that would be fantastic, I think.
So yeah, great point, great ideas, love it. Because you're right, it should be easier. And I think having a call to action on the build and stake day, say, hey, this guy got awarded a bounty. Come on, community, let's show him some love.
And then we could actually put up like the button. That'd be cool.
Exactly. I think that's very harmonious, because you're right. Like, especially in the terms of ComSwap, there's actually a bigger conversation there, because there was technical difficulties as to why that had to happen that way. I come to find out, and again, we can table that because there's more to that. But I can understand your point, Fam, where you're like, I want this to be decentralized. Why are groups like sequestering themselves on these validators? But I think that we got to walk before we run. I know I keep using that in every freaking meeting, and I'm sorry, but it's true. We need to walk before we run. And I think this kind of helps us get into a walking stage. And then after that, we should be sprinting, and it'll be really good.
We're building the plane as it's flying.
Exactly. And you know what? We've done a good job. We put out some flyers. We put out some really good flyers. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. So, Fam,
that's how I think that's how AGI is going to happen. It's going to be building itself.
Yeah. And then none of us will have to do anything.
There's no AGI. There's no AGI test net. It's just AGI. Yeah, I think just I guess my big concern is like, how do we incentivize people to create things and then connect those people to people that have tokens? Because if like that's why I think it's like having that, but that's probably a separate discussion. Yeah, like just having weekly syncs. Like if like everyone works on a weekly calendar, most likely, where they want to get paid Friday or they want to complete something by Friday, and they want to start something Monday. So if we just act on that weekly calendar, we do evaluations only on Friday.
Yep.
We do evaluations.
Evaluations and valuations. So
yes,
and here's the part that I see tremendous value is right here is the where's my cursor is at the build and stake meeting, right? Because I want to aggregate all these new project submissions, and then you get to look at it one time for 5 minutes in a week. Wouldn't that be nice? Like, how many times a week do you get hit up by people saying, I have an idea, make a bounty for it. Oh, I have an idea, pay me. This would help with that. Then the rule would be, you want to make a project, submit in project submissions, and then at the end of the week on Friday, we'll evaluate it and give it some value, and then we'll go from there. Because I don't want people to continue hitting you up constantly, slowing down your work on core commune. That's like ridiculous. It's not worth your time.
Yeah, someone called us last night like 7 times in a row. It was brutal.
Dude, yeah. It's like there's many people that call me many times, and you answer the phone. Exactly. They never talk to you.
Right. And then if we need to, I don't think we need to right now, but if we need to, we can put teeth behind that. Then we're like, okay, if you did have a submission, now it's gone. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
But you need to respect the process, because we need to respect your time, fam. It's not fair to you or the commune project. I mean, it's actually worse than that, because it's the commune project, because that's taking time from you being able to build on the core tenets and the core foundation of this project. So think about it. If we can get it to where it's 5 minutes at the build and stake in the beginning for that piece, and then they don't talk to you till they present with the completed project, wouldn't that be nice? So that's what I'm trying to build here.
That would be nice. we should definitely have. I think we should definitely have some competition as well. We should have an incentive for wanting to go the extra mile, and I think having the build stake creates a social pressure. It also helps these guys who present more, because maybe not all of you are presenting, but yeah, like the whole drama of this like farm thing, was that it just wasn't genuine. It's just people want too many grifters, and so I
Right.
want people who actually care, and who actually care about open source, so that we can pay for open source. The whole thesis of Commune is to create a cryptocurrency that pays for open source. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole thesis. Like we don't want to pay for grifters. Like,
I agree,
defeats
and
the
that's
whole
why
purpose.
I think the vetting really takes care of that in the first part of this meeting. And like I said, where the velocity of getting real devs approved is going to increase. I've been working with Yikes on that. I've been working with Crenshaw on that. That should increase over time, especially as hopefully scammers get tired and give up, and there's less of them. But that's going to take time, just quite frankly. So it's like we've had 100 submissions plus, and it's exhausting going through them all, but we've had to do it, and it's a waste of time, frankly, because of the ones that are scammers, of which there are quite a few. So just want you guys to know we are working on it. Velocity is increasing, though. We're able to get more people from waiting room into the dev Discord faster now. So we're working on that. That is definitely happening. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this meeting, so that you guys as a community knew this was happening. Because sometimes it's like, I'm in this waiting room. What the heck, man? I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, here's my answer. We're going through 99 other entries. And that's not an exaggeration. It's over 100. It's pretty intense. So it's worth it, though, because do you want to have 99 people messaging in here telling you like, oh, do this, do that, or maybe they sign up for a project here and they're not actually going to do it, and then the real devs can't do it because they think, well, what's the point if someone else is already doing it? It turns out it's a scammer. So these are all good things and good work, good trajectory that we're on. So I think this is good. But to your point about competition, fam, I'm totally fine with having, let's say we have one team working on text to audio, and then another, and then the group is like, dude, I want to do it my own way. I don't want to work with these people. I have a different way. I'm totally fine with making a second text to audio 2 channel and have the same bounty. Whoever, may the best one win, and the one finishes first, they get the bounty, the other one doesn't. I think that's healthy competition. I'm okay with that.
I think we should have like, that's why I think we should start mining more aggressively, and then use those emissions to then pay a native token, like bounty, like just like as bonuses, for the end, like for the top bounty makers or voted by the community. And
yeah, well, I can definitely help with the scaling on the mining. That's the thing.
Yeah,
We've been unlocking that this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's okay. Yeah,
if we want alternate, or yeah, I don't know if you are familiar with, like, I've been kind of getting up to speed on subspace and just general substrate stuff. If I can get info on how to either deploy contracts to our frontier palette, or if we can add the contracts palette, one of the two. If I can get info on how to deploy them, I can start deploying.
There. Yeah, the frontier, the EVM smart contract should be already there, unless they took it out. I don't think they did.
So the EVM smart contract is there, but I couldn't find the RPC endpoint information that works for EVM.
I would.
But if you have more info about that,
I'll ask the person who added it, one of the developers.
Please do.
Yeah, I'll connect you with him, and then he'll explain to you. He'll just give you his code for him deploying the smart contract.
I watched a presentation about Frontier last night, so I'm sort of getting up to speed there too. So hopefully I can help out with making either an ERC20 or something where we can represent, or like, I don't know, some NFT thing where we can kind of crystallize some of this stuff on chain.
A cool bounty would be, is it possible? We can take this offline, but is it possible to essentially verify a substrate signature SR25519 on an ERC20? So can I have a string that's a signature from a different key type and verify that in a smart contract? We can talk about this offline, but that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Because but anyways, we can talk about this.
Very interesting idea.
Yeah,
I
Frontier
think,
has some good utilities for that. Yeah.
I love those kind of conversations, and I think those are really interesting and really good. We should definitely have them. I think we need this workflow in place first, and then we'll iterate with these NFT ideas and validators and maybe a treasury. A treasury would be really cool. I didn't want to bring it up because that's a whole ball of wax or whatever, can of worms.
Yeah.
But that would make this a lot better if we had a treasury that then auto staked, or we vote on staking to cool projects every single Friday. That kind of solves a lot of this. But I don't want to solve everything with tech in the short term, because tech always takes longer than you think. And I'm speaking from experience. Baco and I keep talking about how when the project is 98% done, that last 2% takes like the long majority of the time it takes. It's so ridiculous, but it's so true.
Because
My
you
wife,
think it's done, you're like, I'm done. I don't have to work on it anymore.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I just need to finish this last part. Well, I'll be done by the end of the day. 3 weeks later.
Yes, something I have to do
Unironically,
more
I've been building
is
this ETL by
set
one.
daily timelines. I need to
Yeah,
set
that's a good idea. That's healthy.
like requirements. Like, what am I expected to do today? I think that tends to help. I'm not really good at that. How much can I do that?
Well, definitely share notes. I'd love to learn that process, because I'm always trying to refine my workflow for myself, and so I can get more productivity out of myself. But I did want to, so I'm going to do a quick recap, because I think we've almost hit the 1 hour mark. But the outcomes of this is we've discussed this. We're going to make better infographics for how this works, so that the community knows, for everyone who didn't attend this meeting. And we're going to document the path forward for how these projects are made. We're going to use a bounty system plus staking, and a call to action for staking at the build and stake. Payment is bounty is done on completion. We'll have project managers, and we're still figuring that piece of it out. But I think that we have a really good system in place. We're also going to vet through the Google form, and if people want to communicate through the waiting room, we can do that. But we are going to implement something like slow mode, and we're going to massage it till we find a happy medium between people complaining and people just chilling, and making sure that we're not penalizing people who are just chilling, but we are penalizing people who are just spamming when token, when whatever kind of junk. So I think we have a good place forward. The other thing I want to take offline with you, fam, is I want to talk about who manages the main commune website, so that we can get that updated and worked on. I know it had a recent update, but right now I can't update it, and I want to know, how do I make that process happen? So why don't we take that offline, and then we'll figure that piece of it out. But I think that's going to be tremendously valuable. I have one guy working on DocuSource who pinged me, and I want to circle back with you so we can get that all figured out.
Okay.
But this looks really good. Really excited.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I know. Lots of upcoming changes. Very exciting.
Very good. Well, anyway, so what?
Sorry, before we close up, I just wanted to circle back quickly just to double clarify, because a lot of this obviously feeds into the build and stake, and that's like one of the primary outputs now. So one of the takeaways is that it's most likely going to extend the duration of the event, which is perfectly okay. But I wanted to double check the incentives, basically, or the plan for the incentives. So it was going to change to be a bounty payment upon completion, but there was also going to be like an additional
staking
potential incentive.
Yes. Yeah.
Plus the call to action to the community to stake as well.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Also, I mean, call to action. Go ahead.
So, in my mind, after sort of speaking about this, it feels like if we were to make, like, for example, if there's like 8 people presenting, 3 of them receiving one of these bonuses, for example, I think feels like a lot. And I think we probably want to have a look at the numbers and talk about the numbers a little bit as things go by, especially when it comes to rewarding incentives and things like that, because we want to promote excellence, right? And we definitely don't want to lower our standards just to make up numbers. Like if we say a number like 3, I don't want it necessarily to be the case that we feel forced to do that because that's what we've said, when potentially like the other projects, they're acceptable, but they aren't excellent.
Well, I think that's where the community stake part comes
Mhm.
in. They're
Okay.
voting based on what their perception of the presentation was, right? So the staking part isn't a guarantee. It's more of a hopeful. I mean, maybe unless Fam wants to guarantee his amount of staking to like completed projects on a
Mhm.
temporary basis in addition to the bounty. But it's basic. So that way you have the competition.
We should have like a lock stake
right?
function. We should have a stake lock function where you lock your stake onto a key for like however many days.
Well, that goes
It's
with that.
actually guaranteed.
That's a good idea. That goes with that project I was talking about out of Yikes' idea to make it easy to stake. That could be a feature on there for a build and
Yeah,
stake.
this does.
Oh,
Yeah, this does remind me
future
of
updates
sort
make
of
it
a
very easy to stake.
problem. This reminds me of a problem that I've run into like running a hackathon before, where like I had like 3 or 4 different sponsors, and then I didn't have as many participants as I expected. And what ended up happening was a couple of people, or like the amount of projects that got submitted, either the ones who went for particular sponsor bounties didn't qualify, or like just nobody built for it. So I had these extra prizes like sitting around that nobody had really fit the conditions of. Thankfully, I had those conditions in place, so I just tabled it and then put it back on the docket for next time. So if there's some way to like specify kind of thresholds or goals, and then kind of associate the stake with like the meeting of these conditions, whether it's like maybe there's like one community's choice vote, there's one like technical excellence, or there's one, I don't know, there's like arbitrary things that you must do in order to hit the threshold for stake. That way there can be situations where nobody has attempted to, or nobody has successfully hit the threshold, and thus the stake doesn't get assigned. Like just because kind of thing.
Well, we don't have a treasury like that, so it's not like right now someone would have to unstake from something else to stake this new thing. So you won't have prizes just sitting there not being used. I don't think that's a thing in our current situation. The other thing is the bounties, they're just not going to get paid until they're done. But you do bring up a great point about what is essentially asking what is the definition of done, right? Which I think needs to be very clearly articulated in those dev channels for that project. That project needs to have a definition of done in there, because the last thing I want is people like thinking they crushed it. I did this cool project, then they present, and then we're like, oh, you totally missed the mark. Now that's inevitably that's going to happen, but we have to do a due diligence in making sure that we on the other end of the presentation have communicated clearly what the definition of done is. And I think that will also help a lot. That's the other thing that we need to look at, but that's not something that should happen in the meeting. That should happen way before. And maybe in that first vetting process, when they submit the form and Crenshaw is like, okay, this guy's submitted, can I get a core dev to look at the project to see if it's should go live on Friday or not? That's a good point, a good time where we should make sure that they met that criteria and just go through the submissions.
I was actually sort of gearing towards the opposite end of the spectrum from where this went off on. What I was trying to get to was what happens, for example, if we end up having too many people who have supposedly, from their perspective, completed a bounty, and then we end up with an itinerary for the build and stake that's like 3.5 or 4 hours long, for example.
Community votes.
I vote we have a cutoff and it gets pushed to the following week. Honestly, like I don't think we'll have that many submissions. 2, I'd rather have too many than too few.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know what I mean? Like I genuinely don't think we're going to have that many genuine submissions. Just like that, we'll have that problem. I don't see that. That might happen, but I kind of strongly doubt it. And again, it would be better to space it out over the time anyway. But I can definitely be wrong.
I was mostly thinking in my head about, for example, when you referenced the idea of bringing out the competitive spirit and having potentially some kind of event of having multiple people try and develop the same thing for like an eye on the prize style thing, because it is potentially quite likely that we end up with a fair few submissions.
I think we should actively try to not do that, because
I think that's an outlier too.
It's a disappointing thing to have like work a bunch and then not get anything for it.
Yes, but that's why it needs to be communicated, because I think FAM has a great point about competition, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But people should know that they're engaging in competition.
Yeah, and realize the risks and whatever.
Yeah, but I do think first one to present wins, like with a successfully completed project. That's just the way. I can't think of a better way to do it. Like if two people try to engineer the same thing and they know that they're competing, may the best man win. Like just straight up. And I think again, the key is that they need to know that they're competing. We've already had problems with this, with multiple people working on the same bounties and not realizing it, and then there's been hardship or heartache because of
Well,
it.
we
And
got
that's
3
totally
front
fair.
ends, so.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So yeah, no, I agree with you. So that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid here. But yeah, to your point, that's frustrating, because then somebody builds a front end that nobody uses, and then they don't get they don't get staked to, and they don't get a bounty, and they're like, why'd I waste my time? So I think this helps solve that. So that's what we're trying to do. But does that make sense, Crenshaw? The tricky situation is if they present on the same day. But honestly, I feel like that's a problem that we can head off ahead of time, because you'll get those submissions on the same week, and then we'll know about it, and then we can address it then. I don't want to solve problems we don't have.
No,
I do
that's
like
okay.
looking ahead and trying to head off problems that we might have, but only if there's like a really good confidence they're going to happen.
Yeah, if we don't feel like that those are going to be like two ends of the spectrum that we're actually going to end up meeting, then that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to make sure that we address them.
It's a great question. It's a really interesting scenario. I do
That
appreciate it.
I would say like maybe it's something we should continue to discuss as we see it happen, because it immediately occurs to me that if we do the like first person to hit all the requirements wins, what we're optimizing for is for speed, not completion or quality. So
well, yes, as long as the definition of done is met, I'm okay with that. Honestly, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Like
you
if
just
somebody
have good definitions of what like the completed project is.
And to Fam's point earlier, if like somebody does that and then it's like, hey, this could be done even better. Like maybe that second team says, dude, I could have done that way better, but they just beat us. Great, we'll make another bounty, which is
I like that. Yeah.
improve the one that was already submitted. Because they both did good work and it's both valuable. Why not reward both in that manner? They're like, but it was going to take me an extra week to do. Great, second bounty. That's good.
Yeah,
That's a good use of money for commune.
Yeah, I'd also like to think about if we like the thing that we're doing is attempting to incentivize people to care about things that are getting built, and then B, people to build the things that people care about.
100%.
So I think that it is worth continuing to look at it to see if like I think in chat DDN brings up a good point where if we're able to optimize for collaboration over competition while still also getting the similar levels of quality that we want, I think that's worth supporting. But of course, that'll be like something that we see happening over time, whether it gets like super like cutthroat and sharky, or if it gets like, hey, dude, you built this awesome thing, I want to build on it with you, like that's super dope, that kind of thing. So yeah, worth thinking about.
Yeah, great points. Great points. I think this is a really great step in the right direction. And I'd like to make the issue with like multiple people doing the same thing, it kind of becomes a bigger issue with like front end work. To Bako's point, we don't need 3 different front ends. Like that's insane, in my opinion, and I could be wrong. But I do think this fosters both the ability to collaborate and join a team and have competition. And we will write this in the modules section of the dev Discord at the top with like the rules of engagement, like I said, and explain that these are options for people so that everybody knows. I want everyone to know how this works, even if it didn't work perfectly. As long as everybody knows how this is supposed to work, it's going to help us move forward and iterate on. But heretofore, it's just been random idea, and then just a absolute mountain of like messages and confusion. And so this, I think, is going to bring clarity, and with that, speed, and we're going to get a lot of benefit out of that. And honestly, we could even do things like on the build and stake at the very end, we could like do a Discord poll or something, or vote and be like, put this emoji for the one that you thought was the best, blah, 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 presented today. We could do all sorts of gamification and stuff to get more of that community engagement on the staking side, to Fam's point. And I think that's good. But those are details that can be figured out later. We're going to walk before we run.
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. Like we're solving to what seems to me to be the critical problem right now, which is like things are hard and confusing. And like if there's like if we all know anything from building consumer products, if it's like more complex, if like an 8-year-old can't figure it out in 3 minutes, the UX isn't good enough yet. So
Yeah,
like
my goal is to like have UX with just you have emojis on it, no words, and people can still.
yeah, like the simpler we can make it, the better. So I think we're looking in the right direction. Like handle that first, and then build complexity on top of it if we need it.
Exactly. I don't mind solving things with code. In fact, I prefer it. But in the near term, we just don't have that luxury because we can't keep going the way we've been going so far. So this solved, I think, a lot of that. And like you said, I think, yikes, this is like 80-20. We're going to solve 80% of the problems with this one set of solutions.
Yeah, definitely agree.
So I do think we need to wrap it up because we're past the hour mark. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. I'll take some of this offline to figure out how we can document it in a way that's centralized. I'll also talk to FAM about what we can do about revamping the website such that we can get more work done on it. I think that would be really cool. But thank you very much for participating, everyone. I'm really excited for where we are headed.
GG, well played.
Thank you for hosting.
Awesome,
No worries.
man.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.